Ben Roethlisberger had some really harsh things to say about the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. So on his podcast, Footballing with Ben Roethlisberger, he said after the Steelers lost to the New England Patriots, maybe the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers is done. And, a lot of people don't really have a lot of bad things to say about Big Ben as a player. But when it comes to his leadership, it was often questionable. He was somebody who was known for being a jackass. He wasn't really a incredibly easy to like guy. But I do feel like he told a lot of truth in what he said. He had one quote when he said, "Who's grabbing someone by the face mask and saying, that's not what we do?" Roethlisberger added, "Is that happening? Yes, you have guys on defense doing it, but you need guys on other sides of the ball doing it. You need someone to stand up in that room on offense and be like, hey, this isn't what it means to wear the black and gold." And then he had another comment that he said, "This isn't what has been handed down from those teams in the 70s. The Steel Curtain, the 4 Super Bowls, the Knowles, the Bradshaws, the Blunts, all those people, it's unbelievable." And his last statement that he said, he criticized Mike Tomlin. "You can't afford in the second half of games to burn silly timeouts and to not have them late in the game," Roethlisberger said on his podcast. "To me, that's bad coaching." Everything that Big Ben said, he was right on the money. I mean, you can say, "Oh, JT, you can't really take Big Ben's comments seriously because this dude wasn't great off the field. He wasn't a great leader. What does he know about leadership?" Say what you want to say about Big Ben. This dude is a future first ballot Hall of Famer. He won 2 Super Bowls. Big Ben wasn't carried by a great defense once we got to 2012 and 2013. In the later years of Big Ben's career, he was carrying this Steelers team. Well, the offense was carrying this Steelers team. Because you got to remember, after 2011, when the Denver Broncos lost to Tim Tebow in overtime, the defense got old. And it took a couple of years for this defense to get back to playing at an elite level. They were always good getting pressure on the quarterback, but I remember watching countless Steeler games prior to 2021 and 2022 where the defense was a liability. The secondary wasn't that great. The pass rush was the only thing good. And that was a big reason why the Steelers weren't able to win Big Ben a 3rd Super Bowl. That's why they always kept coming up short to the New England Patriots. You remember when they got blown the hell out by New England in the AFC Championship game? Absolutely embarrassing. People forget that Big Ben had some of his best statistical seasons with the Steelers his last couple of years in Pittsburgh. Once Todd Haley and Bruce Arians arrived, Big Ben's game elevated to a different level. He threw for over 500 yards in the game multiple times. Even Antonio Brown gives Big Ben his props. Like Antonio Brown says that Big Ben was a fantastic quarterback. Say what you want to say about this dude's leadership. He has a lot of good points. And the same thing that he's saying with the Steelers tradition being done, or maybe it being done, I've been yelling this for the last couple of months. The standard in Pittsburgh used to be championships. We used to be an organization that used to always expect to be a Super Bowl contender. How come the expectations have went to competing for Super Bowls, expecting to make deep playoff runs, to being okay with 9-8 seasons, maybe making it into the first round of playoffs and getting our ass kicked? Mike Tomlin always preaches how the standard is the standard and mediocrity and complacency should never be tolerated, but that's all the Steelers have been putting up with the last couple of years under him. Starting Mitch Trubisky when you know this dude is ass is complacency and mediocrity at its finest. This team has been mediocre over Mike Tomlin the last couple of years. Being okay with 9-8 seasons and making excuses for Mike Tomlin to keep his job because he's never had a winning season. It's the definition of mediocrity and complacency. When the standard used to be more than that. Now the Mike Tomlin fan club makes the whole defense argument about how you can't fire a guy that wins 9 games consistently. You can't fire Mike Tomlin. He didn't sign Mr. Trubisky. You have to be really naive to think that Mike Tomlin doesn't have a little bit in say-so and who gets drafted and who gets signed to this roster. They signed Mr. Trubisky in free agency. He's been with this team for so long that they're not going to sign a quarterback that's going to replace a future Hall of Famer without running it by Mike Tomlin. You see, Mike Tomlin, he's a really good coach. But I definitely feel like he needs a fresh start elsewhere. And the Steelers need a fresh start too. When's the last time this dude hired a good offensive coordinator? You know, I was listening to Big Ben on his podcast talk about how, you know, in the locker room, it was a family. Everybody was holding guys accountable. I don't really know how truthful that was because Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster were kind of doing their own things. But the culture in Pittsburgh when Big Ben was playing was definitely a lot better than what it's been now. You see, with Mike Tomlin, my biggest criticism with him is that he never has this team ready to play against inferior competition. He'll have you ready and buttoned up for the big games, unless you're going against New England and Bill Belichick. But when it comes to playing against teams that the Steelers are expected to beat, this team always finds a way to not get it done. And that's why I never had this team being a playoff team. My prediction for Pittsburgh coming into this season was that they were going to go 9-8, and people were saying, oh, you're just hating on Mike Tomlin. I wasn't hating on Mike Tomlin. I'm just being honest. And I'm happy to know that I'm not the only person that's noticing the same thing. Big Ben, maybe he is right. Maybe the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they used to be, the days of the steel curtain, are no longer. But it shouldn't be that way. You got to ask yourself, how have we gotten to this point? We've gotten to this point because Mike Tomlin has not really been able to do a good job at hiring the right guys on offense. And I was listening to Stephen A. Smith on First Take. I don't really like listening to Stephen A. Smith that much when it comes to his football takes. I don't really agree with most of them the majority of the times, but he had a point with Big Ben. Big Ben was a little bit of a reason why the Steelers are in the situation that they're in now. You look at how he wasn't able to get along with Todd Haley, and Mike Tomlin ends up having Randy Fichtner promoted to be OC, somebody who Big Ben liked it. And the offense hasn't been the same since. Todd Haley was an incredible offensive coordinator. Not as good as Bruce Arians, but he wasn't too far off. So Stephen A. Smith did have a little bit of a point when he said that Big Ben's hands aren't clean in this situation. He wasn't the most likable guy in the locker room. He went about a lot of things wrong, especially when it came to calling out Antonio Brown in the media. That wasn't a good look. But you still can't deny that this dude was a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. He led this team to 2 Super Bowls, regardless if he was helped out by the defense or not. Against the Arizona Cardinals, who threw that touchdown pass to Antonio Holmes? This dude, Big Ben, was clutch as hell. And I got a lot of respect for what Big Ben did for this organization. And the fact that he called out Mike Tomlin in this team, in this culture, you think will be a wake-up call for Mike Tomlin. You know, if you're one of those people that continue to go to war for Mike Tomlin, say that he still should be the head coach of Pittsburgh, I ask you, why is it that Big Ben doesn't feel the same way? Because Big Ben, ever since he retired, this team hasn't been the same. And you can say he was carried by the defense all you want to. That was early in his career. His last 5-6 years, this offense was the best thing about this team. And this defense wasn't that great. You know, the defense always had talent, but anytime they went up against a great quarterback, Mike Tomlin's zone defense, that shit got carved up. I'll never forget. I forgot what year it was, but the Steelers were playing the New England Patriots. And you had a cornerback that dropped a potential game-sealing interception. I forgot who the cornerback was that dropped it too. But then right after that, you know what happened? Tom Brady hit Rob Gronkowski on nearly like 2-3 straight receptions, 2-3 straight throws, and they resulted in the Patriots winning that game. They drove down the field and scored a touchdown with ease. You see, the defense for Pittsburgh was not as good Big Ben's final seasons, at least when he was playing at his best level, as what it has been now. You see, Big Ben, his final years, 2019, 2020, those when Big Ben fell off the cliff. That's when he was regressing. That's when the defense finally started to come together and play at a really high level. But prior to 2020, 2019, 2018, like the defenses were not all that great in my opinion. You see, the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers used to be this was an organization that the standard was Super Bowl or bust, or at least AFC Championship or bust, or at least divisional round or bust. Mike Tomlin can't even get past the wild card round. I would never forget 2020. Kevin Stefanski goes down. He can't coach in that game because he got deceived. And you would have thought that would have been a guaranteed win. Mike Tomlin gets an interim head coach. He should be able to outcoach that dude. And the Steelers lost that game. Big Ben put him in the hole. But if you want to find another example, what about when the Steelers lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs? And Leonard Fournette went crazy, and Blake Bortles had a great game against this Steelers defense. Mike Tomlin's supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, but his defense got embarrassed in the division round, coming off a first-round bye, by the way, against Blake Bortles and Leonard Fournette. Big Ben got him in the hole in that game, but the defense didn't really do them no favors either because they couldn't stop the run. Like, Big Ben, he said a lot of truth in his podcast. And maybe you Mike Tomlin defenders don't want to hear it because you continue to make all the excuses in the world for why Mike Tomlin isn't the problem, but he really is the problem. And if you can't accept the fact that he is, then you're just naive. Like, I get tired of hearing this whole excuse. He didn't pick Mr. Trubisky. Yes, he did. He may not have had 100% of the say in the matter, but I'm pretty sure with how long Mike Tomlin has been the head coach of this organization, they're not going to draft or sign any big-time quarterback that's going to replace a guy like Big Ben without running it by him first. Mike Tomlin has a little bit of a say when it comes to these personnel decisions because he's earned that based on what he's done for this franchise. But now, I think that the standard has went down, and the new standard in Pittsburgh is mediocrity, and 9-8 seasons are okay. I would love to get back to having expectations when Super Bowl was the goal and not being okay with just making it into a wild card round and getting smacked and embarrassed. This was an organization that I remember when I first became a fan of this team back in 2008, 2009, when I first started ever watching football. They were always expected to win it all, and it was nothing more, nothing less. And anything less than competing for a Super Bowl or not making a deep playoff run was unacceptable. Yes, people had some down years, but the Steelers, they haven't reached the Super Bowl in going on nearly 14 years, man. I was in third grade when the Steelers lost to the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl. I was in first or second grade when they won their last Super Bowl against Kurt Warner in Arizona. So I've seen when this organization used to have high expectations, when they used to have a gold standard, and I've watched the expectations get lower and lower every single season. I don't have any grudge against Mike Tomlin. I love Mike Tomlin. I love this dude as a leader. This dude is a great rah-rah guy. But when it comes to in-game execution, his clock management isn't great. He doesn't make great in-game adjustments. He waits too long to make personnel decisions that should have been made earlier. Mason Cole should be benched right now. There's no denying that. Like, their left tackle, Broderick Jones, this dude should have been starting from day one. And I know I'm not a coach. I know I don't have a right to say what a head coach should do or not. But I'm pretty sure a lot of the things that we've been seeing out of Mike Tomlin, choosing to continue to start Mitch Trubisky when he should be starting Mason Rudolph, it's just freaking common sense. Like, Mike Tomlin's best coaching job was when they were winning games with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, and they nearly made it to the playoffs with Big Ben having that elbow injury. That was the best coaching job I've ever seen Mike Tomlin have. And for the previous couple of years, Mike Tomlin has overachieved. But this season, when the expectations were for Pittsburgh to at least be able to win 10, 11 games, I didn't have them winning more than 9 games. But the majority of people felt this was a team that was good enough to win 10 games or more. And they don't look like they're on track to do that. You may not love Big Ben. I know that this dude is a great player. He's one of the greatest Steelers of all time. He's a future first ballot Hall of Famer, but a lot of people don't really care for Big Ben that much as a person, and I understand why. But he does have a lot of valid points in his harsh criticisms or his harsh truths about the Steelers franchise right now, where they're at, and his thoughts on Mike Tomlin are pretty valid too.